Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for Mercury in Scorpio, and Mercury is the planet of communication. So it is how we convey our ideas to other people, as well as how we take in the information around us, and also how we process information and what we're thinking about, I call it what our consciousness is all about, even though that might not be really 100% accurate. But I do see a connection between our worldly mind, if you will, and our spiritual state of consciousness. And I do think that when you are elevated spiritually, you're more high-minded in a more mundane sense as well. So Scorpio is a fixed water sign, and, got to bring out that cliche, intense. That's the first thing people say when they think of Scorpio. Scorpio is ruled by two planets. It's ruled by Mars and it's ruled by Pluto. And if you know anything about these planets in their relationship to astrology, you know that they're not light and fluffy energies. They are very, I don't know if I want to say heavy, but yeah, kind of. I would say Mars is combative. It's the god of war, after all. And Pluto is the god of the underworld. And so combined, it's like, Mars rules Aries. So if you think of an Aries person who has a lot of energy, who is sometimes very pushy, aggressive, and then you combine it with Pluto, which is all about power, it can make a Sun in Scorpio person, let's just say, to say nothing of Mercury in Scorpio person, kind of complicated because there's a lot going on there. And this is a good time to mention that if your Mercury is in Scorpio, your sun sign must either be also in Scorpio, in Libra, or in Sagittarius, because Mercury is very close to the sun. So it's not going to stray too far from it. And so Scorpio is a fixed water sign, and therefore Mercury in Scorpio is somebody who when they think about something, there's a definite subjectivity there. They inject their own personal bias and experiences, and that's really what bias is, if you think about it. It's like being really stuck on the things that have happened to you and applying it everywhere you go. And, that fixed modality combined with the water, I think, is what really makes Scorpio so emotionally stubborn. And this can really influence how they feel about everything. I always call Scorpio an extreme sign because there tends to not be a lot of middle ground with Scorpio. And this can go for any of the personal planets, but like Mercury, a Mercury in Scorpio person will probably have very distinct opinions. They're not going to be kind of like a Mercury in Libra or Mercury in Gemini person where they're kind of open to see multiple sides of things. And, the Mercury in Scorpio person will be fairly black and white. No, this is how it is. And that stubbornness kicks in when somebody else may say, yeah, but I think this. No, it's this way, and this is why. And usually there's going to be that really strong emotional connection to whatever it is that they feel so adamant about. Now, one thing that I think can happen sometimes with people who have a fixed Mercury is that it's like their first impressions become crystallized, and then you cannot sway them after the fact. And this would be especially true for Mercury in Scorpio because it's a water sign, and so the emotions are also connected. And if this is an opinion about a person, what I have noticed about the sign of Scorpio itself is that when they form that opinion, they don't alter it later on, even if they have more information at their disposal. And when I was talking about Mercury in Taurus, I was talking about prejudice. And I think that this could be the highest form of prejudice because one of the aspects of prejudice that's the most hard to, the toughest nut to crack about it is about trying to get people to understand that things are, they were making a snap judgment and they need to understand more about the person, place, or thing that they have a prejudice against. And some people will refuse to enter new evidence into their judgment. And with Mercury in Scorpio, again, it may even be beyond the so-called logical realm of things, because Scorpio is an incredibly intuitive sign. Now, in addition to being a water sign, which will make them intuitive just by virtue of that fact, there's also the ability of the Scorpio person to go beneath the surface of whatever they're dealing with and ferret out the secrets, like a natural detective, like a psychologist who is analyzing the motivations of someone, but the hidden motivations, not the things that they can see on the surface. And this is one of those things that people might just chalk up to being, great analytical skills, for instance. But it's more than that, because the Mercury in Scorpio person is already going through life with the idea that there's more than meets the eye. And so they know, or they suspect, that everybody has a little dirt. Everybody has a few skeletons in their closet. That's the premise that they're going on. So they already have a head start in perhaps uncovering what those skeletons are, where other people may just kind of blithely go around and think that everything is on the up and up. And Mercury and Scorpio people can really get others to bare their soul to them. Scorpio rules the 8th house of intimacy, and sex is a key word of the 8th house, but another form of intimacy is, of course, emotional intimacy. And even with the sexual angle, Scorpio is not frivolous when it comes to sex. It has to be soulful sex. And so that isn't anything they take lightly. But in terms of others confiding to them, Scorpio is a sign that is very trustworthy in that regard. Secrets are sacred to Scorpios. And so they are perfectly willing to be the father confessor, if you will, where they will, hear the confessions of others. But it's one of those quirky little things where it doesn't work both ways. They are unwilling to let other people in on what's going on with them. So it can be a situation where a person feels like they can really talk to a Mercury and Scorpio person about their problems and feel heard and feel understood, but it's like a one-way street. And they may still have a lot of questions about what's going on with the Mercury in Scorpio person, because that person may keep themselves they might be quite secretive about their own thoughts. This is one of those Mercury signs that may not be too forthcoming about their own life, but again, maybe collecting a lot of information about other people. And because Mercury in Scorpio is so adept at perceiving nuances, they have to be careful about not getting overly paranoid. Paranoid or overly suspicious, where they read too much into everything, because that can, I think about the Page of Swords in the Tarot, or maybe it's the reversed Page of Swords, that is like, too reactive, and the mind is going in these directions that it doesn't need to go. The Mercury in Scorpio person has the bullshit detector on full blast. They are capable of seeing liars. They're usually very adept at spotting liars a mile away. And so that's another thing. Now, is that intuitive psychic ability? I don't know. There's like this fine line. There's this... I think that perhaps there's a bit of that, but I think there's just so much understanding, inherent understanding of human nature that they have, that they almost don't need psychic abilities, but they do have those as well. In terms of what might be of interest to them, intellectual stimulation, which we would usually associate with how they talk, or kind of books that they would read. Definitely mysteries, the type of books with the paranormal, reincarnation, anything along these lines. True crime, I think. I came up with that one myself, and I think that, that's a whole genre where it's not fictional. It's actual people who have committed crimes, maybe famous crimes that have occurred, and the whole background of the person who committed the crime, and things like that. And it can be very interesting to go into the psyche of these individuals. In terms of, communication, sexting, I put down talking dirty. Again, I don't think that this is something that a Mercury in Scorpio person is going to do indiscriminately. I think that if they are going to do this, it's going to be with somebody that they have likely a strong emotional bond with as well. The Scorpio person has a tendency, because of that overly suspicious nature, to sometimes sting. You've probably heard the Scorpio sting, almost like as a defense mechanism. If they perceive in a conversation that the other person is disrespecting them, disrespecting their views, they can, really try to gain that upper hand, that control, by stinging, using cutting language that cuts to the quick. John Lennon had a sun in Libra, but he had Mercury in Scorpio, and he had a very sharp tongue, and people knew that. And this is an example of that. And if you ever watch, on YouTube, they have these interviews with him, with Dick Cavett and things like that. Absolutely fascinating, because Libra is such a great conversationalist, being an air sign, and coupled, and just highly intelligent, and coupled with that insightful and to the, marrow, piercing to the marrow type of, way that Mercury in Scorpio communicates, it makes for compelling interviews because there's not this excessive, yammering. They really are. And yeah, that's another thing. And I didn't see that in any of the things I read for this, is that I really believe that Mercury and Scorpio people are deep in their communication, that they don't want a lot of, small talk, that they can't stand that. And so when they talk, they're going to be talking about profound things, not about kind of silly things. And that was one of the things that I have always enjoyed watching, listening to, or reading some of John Lennon's interviews, is that he did tend to talk about profound subjects. And again, the 8th house is connected to the occult, esoteric issues, and he was into that. And so people with Mercury, if you have this, you will tend to be fascinated with that area and maybe want to talk about it with other people, albeit probably with very strong beliefs on this. Also, people with this Mercury tend to hold grudges. Again, fixed signs, this is going to be par for the course, but also in addition, because this is a water sign. So holding on to those negative emotions in your mind, and kind of maybe another thing about fixed signs is fixating on them, obsessing over something somebody said to you that you didn't like, that you felt offended by. Hard angles, as I said, there's 2 planets that rule Scorpio, Mars and Pluto. Hard angles to Mars can indicate angry outbursts, temper issues. And, with Mars, the spontaneity can be there, so flaring up like that. Hard angles to Pluto, power tripping through manipulation. This is particularly, I don't want to say dangerous and make it sound like something really heavy, but you have to watch out for the tendency to try to gain the upper hand in a relationship by using any form of mind games, okay? Because you could be a real master at that. That's funny, because that was one of John Lennon's solo songs, remember? Mind games. He must have known that was a potential for him. Because one reason is because the ability to penetrate into another psyche is so deep that the person can easily gain access to that other person and be able to understand what makes them tick, and therefore how to best manipulate them. And a person with insecurities, who doesn't feel powerful in their life, they may be tempted to utilize this type of negative behavior, destructive behavior, and it's not good. You don't want to do something like that. And the other thing I want to say, there was one more thing that I want to say. If you have Mercury in Scorpio and you really like to write, whether it's poetry, fiction, song lyrics, you have a real ability to move people with your words, because you have, you can come up with very powerful language that sways others. It could even be for like public speaking, like a politician that wants to inspire others, or like somebody who's doing pep talks and things like that. So your words are imbued with a lot of power, and they may not be, you may not be somebody who just talks nonstop. You may just speak very sparsely, but your words hold a lot of power. So that can be great for literature and other forms of communication. Okay, well, that's what I have for you. I hope that you enjoyed this. And if you'd like a private natal chart reading, the link is below. Thank you for listening. Take care. Bye.